Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. The fine folks from Reach Out and Read Connecticut are back with us. Christine Garber was on the show once before. She's the Connecticut Executive Director for Reach Out and Read. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We were at your place last time. We're bringing you to our house this time. For those that aren't familiar with Reach Out and Read, what is it?
So Reach Out and Read is a national nonprofit organization. We partner with pediatricians to prescribe books to kids at their well child visits and encourage parents to read aloud to their children.
How was it decided that something like this was needed way back when it came about?
Well, way back when it came about in 1989.
That's pretty far back.
Yeah, 25 years. It was actually founded in Boston City Hospital by some doctors and educators, and it was really founded over an argument in the waiting room where they had been putting used books in the waiting room.
You always see that in your typical waiting room.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that, the way you're describing it, not a lot of thought is put in it. Whatever's around and available, let's just throw on the table there, right?
So then I'm sure that was the case, and then they realized that the books were disappearing. And then, so some people were saying, well, I'm not going to put any more books out because they're disappearing. And then others were saying, well, maybe we need to put more books out because the children need the books. And so that's really where the idea came from. And then they decided this was a great distribution system for new books, and also to reach the parents and to talk to them about why it's so important to read.
Now, a lot of people, when they hear about this, Reach Out and Read, they might get it confused with another organization, RIF, just right off the top of your head, just because it's a reading type.
Right. With RIF in Connecticut, we often get confused with Read to Grow.
Okay.
That's
another one.
Which is in Branford, right. But we are different. For Read to Grow, we very much complement each other. They provide new books and information on maternity floors when babies are born, and then we pick up at the well child visits when they're 6 months old at the primary care physician.
So since it's Reach Out and Read Connecticut, I assume that other states have a very similar, if pretty much the same sort of a program in place?
Yeah, so we're a national organization, and so we're in all the states. Some of the states have a regional office per se, and some of the states are what we call that we just have unaffiliated sites that report into our national center in Boston.
And how is Connecticut set up?
Connecticut is a region,
Okay.
and so we have a regional office here in Connecticut with myself. We have 2 program coordinators, and then we have Kathy Wiley, who's our Connecticut Medical Director.
And we will meet her in the second segment.
Yes.
So since it is Reach Out and Read Connecticut, in Connecticut, what is the status of where we are reading-wise?
So, I did pull some of the Connecticut stats. Unfortunately, in Connecticut, we have the largest achievement gap, which means the children that are from low-income families, they have the largest gap from their more affluent peers as far as where they are with reading. So we like to look at 4th grade reading scores, because 4th grade is an important transitional year where in 3rd grade you're learning to read, and in 4th grade you're reading to learn. So we often look at 4th grade reading scores. And for low-income children in Connecticut, based on our Connecticut Mastery tests, 81% of the children were not reading proficiently, versus about half of that, I think it was 43%, for their more affluent peers. So 81% of low-income children are not reading proficiently in 4th grade.
Is it because a lot of times maybe it's a single-parent home, maybe the parent's at work, and they're not able to spend as much time with the parent at home? Is that what it is?
So there's many reasons for this, and it's not just in Connecticut.
Yeah.
This is a national problem, and there's much research on the subject that children from low-income families enter school behind. So they don't have as many books in the home. Their parents are working. It could be a single family. They don't have as much time, like you were saying, to read to them. The parent may not have the resources to purchase the books. the parent may not be educated and may not know that it's important to be reading or talking or singing or really communicating with their child. But especially before the child can speak, they may feel as though, why would I be reading why would I be reading to them if they can't speak yet? So there's so many reasons, but these are some of the things that we try to educate the parent on when they're getting the Reach Out and Read program. And this is, precisely what Dr. Wiley does, and she educates the parents on this.
So it's very much about the family as well, not just the child. They're involved in it.
Absolutely. So we reach children, really from birth to age 5. So in order to reach them from birth, you're really reaching the parent. And you have to educate the parent and somewhat convince the parent that this is really important, because obviously the 6-month-old or a 3-month-old isn't going to be able to pick up a book and read it to themselves. However, the first 3 years, it's so important to be read to, because that's when the brain is just so rapidly developing.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that more with Kathy in the second segment. When it comes to reading, does it matter what you read, and also does it matter the times that we live in? It's not just a book with a bound cover and paper. It's also an iPad or computer screen. So how much does that play a factor into all this?
So what is most important is the connection between the parent and child, and that the child is sitting on the lap, and there's a communication. There's what we call
a bonding, right?
There's a bonding, and there's a serve and return, or a back and forth. So you could be reading the text in the child's book. You could be making up stories about the pictures in the child's book. If it's a really young child that really isn't understanding the whole story, you could really be reading your own book.
Yeah.
But it's better to be able to point to pictures. An adult book may not have pictures. The thing about the like an iPad or something like that is kids at the ages we serve, they need to explore things, and they put them in the mouth. So it's much better in that regard.
Don't put the
to
iPad
have
in your mouth. Yeah.
Right. So we give board books.
I would imagine, though, there is some advantages to it. If you can fit an entire library on a tablet or a phone, as far as its memory capabilities. Every book in a library can fit in the memory of there has to be something to that, as long as you actually attempt to go and read some of the literature that exists, right?
Right. I'm not sure how many board books, for adult literature, for sure. But for books more for newborns, I'm not sure those are on there. And again,
as available.
Being able to explore the book is actually very important. So I would really steer the parent that way.
I mentioned this to you last time on the show, and I'd be interested to hear what Kathy has to say about this. They showed a little child picking up a book, okay? And the child was trying to swipe and touch the book.
You did
because
mention, I remember.
Yeah, because that's where their mind is now. They see the tablet.
It has become so
Can you
intuitive.
believe that?
It has become so intuitive to them.
They were trying to swipe the pages on the book. Isn't that
right,
amazing?
Right.
Wow.
Right.
So basically, where we stand in Connecticut now is there's an unfortunate gap that you can see. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do the school systems handle it?
So, ideally, we want the kids to enter school prepared to read. We want them to have those foundational literacy skills. If they come to school behind, which many low-income children do, it's costly and time-consuming for our school systems. They need interventions, so they need, that one-on-one person, which is expensive. And you also need highly trained and educated reading specialists in order to do that. It's also, as kids, the later the interventions, the less likelihood that they're going to work or they're going to actually be able to catch up. So it's preventive. It's just so much better if we're able to develop these skills with the kids before they get to school, so that once they get to school, the kindergarten teacher, the first grade teacher can teach them to read because they have those pre-literacy skills.
And you might have some other parents that are so gung-ho and competitive. They've got their kids on the fast track, and they're waiting to get that Harvard
right.
scholarship. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
tell me what the AA policy is and how important it is to what you do.
So this
The AAP policy.
AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics. This is just a wonderful policy, and Kathy will certainly get into this more. The American Academy of Pediatrics has always endorsed our work, but the policy statement is the first time that they're strongly recommending that that literacy and language development and books be a part of everyday primary pediatric care. So not just for low-income children, for all children. And it's just, they're saying it really should be a standard part of pediatric primary care. And that's huge. I mean, that's like vaccines. It's not mandated. They're not saying, pediatricians have to do this, but they are strongly suggesting it, and they're saying this is really important, and we should all be doing it. So it's huge for us because this is what we do.
As executive director, what is your role within the organization?
So for Connecticut, I'm in charge of overseeing all of our programs. We have 70 programs throughout the state. So our programs are all at medical centers or clinics, a few private practices. So our programs are at the doctor's offices. So I oversee the programs, program quality. We visit our programs, provider training, book ordering, because we want, obviously, our programs to have books, and fundraising so that we can afford to have books and training. Fundraising is a big part of it. Communications, awareness, public awareness, trying to get the word out about Reach Out and Read, but also about early literacy and sharing our materials and things like that.
Let's speaking of getting the word out, before we wrap up the segment, we'll have you give out the website for people to go and learn more. What's on the website, by the way?
So we have a national website and we have a Connecticut website. There's a wealth of information on our website. There are parent resources, so parents can go there to get some tips and ideas about, how to engage with their children. There's information for pediatricians. You can apply online to become a Reach Out and Read program. Our research is on there. We have 15 studies that show that our program works. So we have research on there. And then for Connecticut, we have Connecticut-specific things like events and our advisory board, contact information. We have pictures, information on some of our programs.
We're going to put the graphic up on the screen, but what is the website for people to go and see?
It's www.reachoutandread.org.
All right, pretty simple. Christine Garber, the Connecticut Executive Director for Reach Out Read Connecticut. Thanks for being on the show again.
Thanks so much.
We'll take a short break and come back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. In this segment, we are chatting with Kathy Wiley. She is the Connecticut Medical Director for Reach Out and Read, and it is your first time on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I want to have you comment on that story that I told about the young child, and his brain is so accustomed to technology that he took a book and thought it was a tablet. And I mean, is that the reality now?
That is the reality for many children, yes.
It's unbelievable that that is their world now, laptops and tablets and phones, and some might walk into a library and not even, realize exactly what's going on there, right? So let's talk about, in a medical sense, literacy have to do with health in general and why it's important for a child.
So that's a really important question. Literacy is a critical life skill, and we all know you need to read to get through the day, but literacy and communication, which includes language, relates to our economy and our ability to be productive in the work environment. It relates to health. We know people who have problems with literacy skill have poorer health status, more chronic illness, more prone to injury.
It really is like a big domino effect, isn't it?
A big domino effect, yes, absolutely.
Is a child's brain literally you're almost, it's formed based on the ability, they start reading early, there's something to that?
The actual structure of the brain is altered by what your experiences are.
No kidding.
So the pathways in the brain that are preserved and strengthened are those pathways that are used, and pathways that are not used are pruned away. So children who are not read to, those pathways get pruned away very early. Children who are read to, the pathways are strengthened, and they go from being back roads to superhighways to be able to process information very quickly.
So, I mean, you're deciding your future in a way by how much you're reading at a very, very early age.
Yes, the first 3 years of life are critical.
And how, we mentioned in the first segment about, there's sort of being a bonding time between parent and child with the reading. How important is that?
So nurturing relationships are a central part of this. And we know that about a third of children have great difficulty learning to read. And some of us remember that as being children. If you're not read to in the context of a nurturing environment where there's fond memories, memories of being held, cuddled, tickled, soothed, then you don't have those memories when you get up to that tough task of learning to read. And so you need that intense desire to get through that phase where reading becomes natural and fluent.
There are some people in this world that absolutely love to read. I mean, that it's a passion for them, and they'll delve into lots of different areas. Is that something that was developed at a very young age, do you think? Or is it something that you can sort of, acquire later in life too?
So I don't think there's just one answer to that. I think it's complex. There's no question that some people's brains are more flexible in the reading area, that skill comes more easily. But there's also the environmental influences of being in a family who reads or being supported in your reading and having the opportunity. And particularly for those children who don't have a great gift in the ability to read, not having the environmental support and the exposure early is going to really put those kids behind.
I wanted you to comment a little bit more on the AAP policy that Christine did in the first segment, because I know it's important.
So the American Academy of Pediatrics is really the governing body to whom pediatricians look for best practice and standards of care. And it's also has a primary role in advocacy for children in this country in the medical realm. So the fact that the AAP came out with this policy statement lends great weight to what pediatricians need to think about in terms of what they do in the office, and also what we need to think about in terms of how this program will be supported across the country.
So how should, in the pediatric community, what should they be thinking about because of that?
Well,
to get more specific.
Right, to get more specific, pediatricians who are participating in Reach Out and Read or something like it, and Reach Out and Read is the biggest and most widely distributed medically based literacy program, and it also has the very strongest research base that any program has. So pediatricians who are doing that are supported in knowing that they're doing the right thing and that this is important. Pediatricians who aren't doing it yet need to start to think about how to get on board.
They're kind of behind then if they're not on board with this, right?
As much as 25 years behind in some
No
cases.
kidding, really? Wow.
Because that's when it first started.
Tell me about this book that you have in front of you here.
Well, I always like to have a book because sometimes I will demonstrate certain things that I do in the exam room. Because we're talking about a big national program, but at the end of the day, it's really one child, one family with the one pediatrician talking about their literacy skills. So I may talk, this is actually a Connecticut book author, by the way, but I may talk about, for example, that little babies can't turn pages. And so board books spring open so that the baby can put their whole hand in to turn a page.
And there's something visual about it too, if it's popping up or popping open, like you said too, right?
Right, and so we give small babies books with round corners, so they don't poke their eye out. Board books, because they will taste and chew. You know, babies do a lot of exploring with their mouth, and Chris was talking
Right.
about that issue with electronics and mouthing things. And then it's just the whole issue of being visually appealing, you know, parents pointing and then watching for the time when the child can point at the picture.
It's important to see their reaction too and see if you're getting a reaction from them, right?
Yes, yes. And one of the things I really like to do is to give the book to the child and watch to see what they do. And I sometimes will set them up a little bit. So I might hand the book upside down. At
to see
about
if
15 months, yes.
Will they turn it?
Around 15 months of age,
Okay.
they will. And so
Is
I'll
it
do it
because
on
of the
purpose.
picture?
They can figure out that the duck ought to be this way.
Okay.
And around 2, you can take a clown standing on its head. So if you give that to a 15-month-old, they'll go, They'll try really hard to make sense of that. But at 2, they can figure out that's a picture of a clown standing on its head.
That's fascinating because you can see the brain working.
You can see it, and then you point that out to the parent, who might not see that for anything, but you say, did you see that? He turned the book right side up. He knows how to do that. And suddenly the parent thinks, wow, he learned how to do that. My baby's smart.
Yeah, and they're proud, and it's almost like a sort of a motivating factor to kind of keep going the next day. Let's see what we can do. You know what I mean? Let's see what we can discover.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, is it important to have it be a parent-child one-on-one thing? What if a parent has, if it's a larger family, can it be in a group setting? Does that work, or is it better one-on-one?
Well, I think it's some of both, just like all of the things that you do in child rearing. When you have one child, there are certain advantages and disadvantages to that. And when you have several, you have the advantage of a family. Children do learn from their siblings, but every child needs some one-on-one with their parents.
That was an excellent demonstration, just turning the book upside down. What else can you do that might be simple, but yet a parent might not have thought about it?
So another thing I like to look at around that same age, maybe 18 months, is so the child's on the parent's lap, and they might be looking at this picture of these monkeys together. So the child may point. They frequently do this. They'll point, and then they'll look up over their shoulder to see if the parent's looking at the same thing. That's called visual referencing. A parent won't recognize that as being important, but children with autism don't have visual referencing. So I'm very happy when I see that emerging at around that age, and I'll often tell the parent, he was looking at your face to see if you saw the same thing that he saw.
That's an interesting topic you brought up, autism or any kind of a disability, how a parent would deal with that as far as the reading aspects, especially when you're starting young. And a lot of times, maybe it might not even be diagnosed right away. Talk about that a little bit.
So the pediatrician may need to be prepared to guide parents because some of the reading activities are different. We know that in general, children with disabilities tend to get less stimulation when what they really need is more stimulation than an averagely able child. Reach Out and Read actually has handouts for parents, and they're useful for pediatricians also, and family practitioners, by the way, for visual impairment, hearing impairment, motor disabilities, autism, speech delay. And there are strategies. So you're going to use books with texture, of course, if the child's visually impaired. You might use things that have push buttons and squeaks for kids who have hearing impairment to help stimulate and engage their interest.
I mean, could that be another place where technology kind of comes in handy a little bit too, the ability to be able to, audible-wise or something where you can kind of touch it or something like that? I guess technology can come in a little handy, right?
It can come in a little handy.
I sense that you're still very hesitant about it because there is something to be said for that one-on-one with an actual book in hand and getting that feedback from them, right?
Yeah, and part of it's about the age of the child.
Right.
So the very young child really does need to manipulate, as Chris was talking about, and they need to explore and be given some license to explore. As children get a little older, it's more about the content of the book. The younger child, it's really that serve and return, that reciprocal relationship between the parent and the child, and talking about what they see. That's most important.
Back to the autism issue or any kind of a disability, that really becomes a daunting task for the parent who, even with a child, a regular healthy child, they might not know the proper procedure or what to do. But you put this on top of that, what do? I mean, would they have to seek help, and it just again becomes more daunting for them.
Yeah, early intervention is absolutely critical. They need to start early and get professional guidance. There are lots of strategies to help kids. One of the things that happens with the book is because we do have this opportunity to observe skills, we can actually do developmental surveillance at each visit, see how the child's progressing, look for areas of strength and areas of challenge, and figure out how to support the child to the next step and help parents know what to watch for.
Let's take one more break and come right back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. So that is our show for today. Kathy, I want you to give out the website again for people to go and learn more. If they want to somehow get involved, where can they go?
So you can go to www.reachoutandread.org.
And there was, like Christine mentioned in the first segment, so many resources available on the website for people to go and see and learn and maybe ask questions, right?
Yes.
And we certainly encourage them to do that. Kathy Wiley, the Connecticut Medical Director for Reach Out and Read. Pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
That is our show for today. You can see this show and many others on our YouTube sites. We will see you next time. I'm Sean Murphy. Take care.